Hey gang, Ted Gravelin, and welcome to today's Tedcast. And this one is interesting because I got a call today from a guy who was looking for an old video that I had done quite a while ago, and it was probably posted in a Facebook group that doesn't exist anymore. He couldn't find it. He was asking me about this, and it's pretty basic stuff, so I thought I would just kind of recreate the concept of what we were talking about. So I did call the guy back, and we talked about it, and I thought, okay, well, that's a good idea. I should repost what the topic of this video training was. And so what it is it's the difference between markup versus margin. And basically the conversation was, how do you figure out the difference between the two? What's the difference between the two, and how do you figure out the numbers? So I'll give you an example here that's going to be pretty simple to do. Let's first of all assume that the costs we have are $1,000. I'm just picking it because it's a round number. Obviously, if you're doing like an install, the costs are way higher than $1,000. If you're doing a repair, they could be less than $1,000. But when I say cost, I don't necessarily mean just the parts and equipment. I mean all of the costs. So, equipment, labor, commission, financing, anything that's a cost because you're doing some work is part of this number of cost. Okay, so it's all the direct costs. So let's just say you have $1,000 and there are people out there who want to do markup, and let's say they said they want to, here's what the problem is. Sometimes you say, I'm going to get to 50% margin, so I'll just mark it up times 1.5. Well, that's not margin, that's markup. So markup times 1.5 gives you $1,500. Okay, so when you subtract out your 1,000, you get 500 left. Well, $500 is a 33% margin. It's a third of this number. It's not half of this number. Does that make sense to you? So this is a markup thing, and this is a markup concept, and it's like times 1 point whatever you want it to be. 1.3 is 30%, 1.5 is 50% markup. To get to margin, you do it almost backwards, okay? So what you're going to do here is you're going to take, to get a 50% margin, you take your $1,000 and divide by 0.5. You get $2,000. So it's 100% markup, or a 33% margin this way, but it's 100% markup on this side. Now, this is for 50%. This gets a little bit harder to explain, very slightly harder to explain if you're doing something other than 50%. So if you want to get a 40% margin, then you have to divide by the reciprocal of 40%. So you divide by 0.6 in that case. If you wanted to get a 70% margin, you divide by 0.3. Okay, so that would give you the margin you're trying to get to. So all your costs, divide by the divisor you want to use, the reciprocal of the percent you want, and you will get the dollar number that you need to get. Okay, so that's pretty simple. And so one of the first things that happens when I'm working with a new client, we have to talk about these things, markup, margin, and stuff. So this particular guy was talking with, was not an owner, he was a tech, but he was saying, gee, his company's not doing it the way that he thinks it should be done. And he was probably right, because if the bosses got some confusion over these two things, then obviously there's probably a lot of other things going on in the company that could be better. And so if that's the case, then dude, we need to talk, because this is fairly basic for business people. And I see people throwing around terms like overhead and markup and margin and cost of goods sold and all this stuff. And sometimes they don't know what it means. And it's sort of like, to quote The Princess Bride, I don't think that word means what you think it means. So let's get that stuff straight. That's one of the first things we work on, getting these things like that. And so you know that you're setting your pricing right. Because I don't know how many companies I run into a lot that are doing something like this markup thing, thinking they're doing a margin thing. And they, well, I'm not doing it. I'm going to get to 50% margin, so I just multiply by 1 times 5, 1.5. It's like, no, that's giving you 33%, and this is why you're struggling, because you think you're getting 50%, but you're getting 33. And vice versa. I get people over here getting real scared of the fact that, well, the number doubled. I know, that's kind of the point of it. So you got to understand how that's working, and you can go after your desired numbers however you want, but you really should understand how to do it. So if you want some help with it, just send me a text, let me know. You can go to tedgravelin.com/booking. We can have a conversation about it and give you some help or whatever. So that's the tip for today, and we'll talk soon.